What if I told you, the person who first taught your heart how to beat faster, never really left you? There was a time when love didn't need logic. It didn't ask for reasons, timing, or permission. It just arrived, quietly, unexpectedly, and suddenly the world felt different. I remember the first time my heart felt something it had never known before. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was simple. A glance that lasted a second longer than it should have. A smile that stayed in my mind long after it disappeared. And somehow, in that ordinary moment, everything changed. That was my first love. It's strange how something so young, so fragile, can feel so powerful. Back then, love wasn't complicated. It didn't carry the weight of expectations or fear. It was pure. It was honest. It was two hearts discovering something beautiful without even knowing what it was. We didn't need perfect words. Sometimes silence said everything. Sitting together, sharing small laughs, feeling time slow down, those were the moments that felt like forever. And even now, years later, I can still remember the way it felt. Not just the person, but the feeling. That warmth, that excitement, that quiet happiness. First love has a way of marking you. It teaches you how deeply you can care, how much you can give, and how vulnerable you can become. It opens a door inside your heart that can never truly be closed again. But not all love stories are meant to last. And that's the part no one prepares you for. Because just as quietly as it begins, first love often fades away. Maybe life pulls you in different directions. Maybe timing isn't on your side. Or maybe you simply grow into different people. And suddenly, the person who once felt like your entire world becomes a memory. A beautiful, painful memory. I remember the moment everything started to change. The conversations became shorter. The silence became heavier. The smiles, less frequent. And deep down, there was this quiet understanding that something was slipping away, even though neither of us wanted to say it out loud. Losing your first love feels like losing a part of yourself. Because it's not just about the person, it's about who you were when you were with them. The version of you that laughed a little louder, dreamed a little bigger, and loved without fear. But here's the truth, first love never really leaves you. It stays in the songs you listen to late at night. It lives in the places that suddenly feel familiar for no reason. It hides in the memories that appear when you least expect them. And sometimes, it shows up in the way you love someone else. Because your first love teaches you what it means to feel deeply. It sets the standard for what your heart recognizes as real. And even if you move on, even if you fall in love again, there's always a small part of your heart that remembers where it all began. But remembering doesn't mean holding on. There comes a moment when you realize that some stories aren't meant to have a perfect ending. Some people come into your life not to stay forever, but to change you forever. And that's okay, because first love isn't about forever. It's about beginnings. It's about discovery. It's about that one moment in your life when everything felt new, when your heart learned its first language, the language of love. So when you remember your first love, don't let it bring sadness. Let it bring gratitude. Be thankful for the memories. Be thankful for the lessons. Be thankful for the person you became because of it. Because without that first love, you wouldn't know what your heart is capable of. And maybe, just maybe, that's why it's so hard to forget. Because it wasn't just a person you loved. It was the first time you truly felt alive. There is something incredibly pure about first love, something untouched by the noise and complications that come later in life. It begins in the most innocent way, often without warning, without intention. One moment, everything feels ordinary, and the next, there's a quiet shift inside your heart that you can't quite explain. You start noticing the smallest details, the way someone laughs, the way their eyes light up when they speak, the way your world feels just a little brighter when they are near. In that early stage, love is not something you analyze. You don't question where it's going or whether it will last. You simply feel it. Every moment becomes meaningful, every interaction carries a sense of wonder. A simple conversation can replay in your mind for hours. A smile can become the highlight of your entire day. It's a kind of magic that only exists because you don't yet know how fragile it is. First love shapes your emotional world in ways you don't even realize at the time. It teaches your heart how to recognize connection, how to respond to affection, how to open up without fear. Before this, emotions may have felt distant or unclear, but suddenly, everything becomes vivid. Happiness feels deeper, excitement feels stronger, and even silence begins to carry meaning. There's also a certain courage in that innocence. You don't hold back as much because you don't yet understand the risks. You give your attention freely, your time completely, and your feelings without hesitation. There is no past heartbreak to make you cautious, no disappointment to make you doubt. It is love in its most unguarded form, where vulnerability doesn't feel like weakness but rather something natural. And in that space, you begin to discover parts of yourself you never knew existed. You learn what makes your heart race, what makes it ache, what makes it feel full in a way words can't describe. You start to understand that love is not just about another person, but also about how deeply you are capable of feeling, how much you are capable of caring, and how willing you are to let someone else become a part of your world. There are memories that fade with time, slowly losing their color, their detail, their meaning. But the memories of first love are different. They don't disappear. They stay alive somewhere deep inside, quietly waiting for the smallest trigger to bring them rushing back as if no time has passed at all. It's never the big moments that return first. It's the little things. The way your heart used to race when you saw their name appear. The nervous excitement before meeting them, where even a few seconds felt like forever. The way you would replay conversations in your head, smiling at words that seemed so simple yet meant everything. These fragments of the past hold a strange kind of power, because they carry not just what happened, but how it felt. Certain places begin to feel different because of those memories. A street, a classroom, a quiet corner somewhere, it no longer feels like just a place. It becomes a reminder of laughter shared, of glances exchanged, of moments that once felt infinite. Even years later, walking through those spaces can awaken emotions you thought had long settled, as if your heart remembers before your mind has the chance to catch up. And then there are the songs. Music has a way of holding onto emotions more tightly than anything else. A single melody can take you back to a time when everything felt new, when every lyric seemed to tell your story. You hear it, and suddenly you're not where you are anymore, you're back in that moment, feeling everything all over again, as if your heart refuses to let go of what it once knew so well. What makes these memories unforgettable is not just the person, but the version of yourself that existed during that time. The way you laughed without hesitation, the way you believed without doubt, the way you felt without holding anything back. It's a reflection of a time when your heart was discovering love for the very first time, and everything felt more intense, more real, more alive. Even when life moves forward, even when new people enter your world, those memories remain untouched in a quiet corner of your heart, not demanding attention but never truly fading away. Hidden inside the beauty of first love, there is also a quiet ache that slowly begins to reveal itself over time. At first, you don't recognize it. You're too caught up in the warmth, in the excitement, in the feeling that nothing could ever go wrong. But as emotions deepen, so does the possibility of pain, and with that comes lessons that only the heart can truly understand. Heartbreak doesn't always arrive suddenly. Sometimes it begins in small, almost unnoticeable ways. A change in tone, a growing distance, moments that once felt effortless now requiring effort. You start to feel a shift, something you can't fully explain but can't ignore either. And in that space of uncertainty, you learn what it means to hold on while feeling something slip away at the same time. There is a kind of longing that first love introduces, a feeling of wanting to go back to how things used to be, to the simplicity, to the ease. You find yourself revisiting memories, searching for answers in moments that once brought nothing but happiness. You begin to understand that love is not just about connection, but also about the fear of losing that connection. Through that pain, something deeper begins to form within you. You start to recognize your own emotional strength, even if it doesn't feel like strength at the time. You learn how deeply you can care, how much you can give, and how vulnerable that makes you. It becomes clear that loving someone means opening yourself to both joy and hurt, and that the two are often inseparable. There are lessons in letting go as well, though they are never easy. You begin to see that not everything can be controlled, that sometimes love exists without permanence. You learn that effort alone cannot always keep two people together, and that timing, growth, and life itself play their own roles. In the midst of heartbreak and longing, there is a quiet transformation taking place, shaping the way you understand love, shaping the way you understand yourself, and leaving behind a depth of emotion that wasn't there before. Long after first love becomes a memory, it continues to shape the way you see others, the way you connect, and the way your heart quietly searches for something familiar. You may not even realize it, but in every new connection, there is a subtle comparison taking place, not always with the person themselves, but with the feeling they once gave you. First love creates a kind of emotional blueprint. It becomes the first reference point for what affection feels like, for what attention means, for what it's like to be seen and understood by someone in a way that feels special. And because it was your first experience, it carries a weight that nothing else can quite replicate in the same way. It sets a standard, not necessarily in perfection, but in intensity. You begin to notice that certain qualities draw you in more than others. Maybe it's the way someone listens, or the way they make you feel at ease, or even the way they smile. These preferences often trace back to that first connection, to the small details that once meant everything. It's as if your heart remembers what it felt like to be close to someone in that way, and it quietly looks for echoes of that feeling again. At times, this can be confusing. You might meet someone who is kinder, more understanding, more compatible, yet something feels different. Not worse, just unfamiliar. And in that moment, you realize that first love wasn't just about the person, but about the newness of the experience itself. It was the first time your heart opened, the first time emotions felt so intense, so overwhelming, so alive. There's also a tendency to hold on to the ideal version of that love. Over time, memories soften the edges of what was real, turning moments into something almost perfect in your mind. And because of that, your expectations in future relationships can be influenced by something that no longer exists in the same form. Still, this influence is not something negative. It becomes a guide, helping you understand what matters to you, what you value in a connection, and what kind of love feels meaningful to your heart. Letting go of your first love is not a single moment, not a clear decision where one day you wake up and everything feels resolved. It happens slowly, quietly, in ways you barely notice at first. It's in the days when you think about them a little less, in the moments when their absence no longer feels as heavy, in the realization that life has continued to move forward even without them by your side. At first, letting go feels impossible, almost like you're being asked to erase something that meant everything to you. There's a part of you that wants to hold on, not just to the person, but to the memories, to the feeling, to the version of yourself that existed during that time. You wonder if moving on means forgetting, if it means that what you felt was somehow less important. But with time, you begin to understand that letting go doesn't mean losing what you had. It doesn't mean those moments disappear or that they stop mattering. Instead, they begin to settle into a different place within you. They become something you carry, not something that weighs you down, but something that quietly becomes a part of who you are. There's a gentle shift that happens when you stop trying to hold on so tightly. The memories are still there, but they no longer bring the same ache. Instead, they begin to feel softer, warmer, almost like a distant melody that you can still recognize but no longer need to follow. You can look back without feeling pulled back, without feeling stuck between what was and what is. Cherishing what once was becomes easier when you accept that it was never meant to stay the same forever. You start to see the beauty in its impermanence, in the fact that it existed at all. Not every love story is meant to last a lifetime, but that doesn't make it any less real, any less meaningful. And in that acceptance, there is a quiet kind of peace, where you no longer resist the past, but instead allow it to exist alongside your present, as a memory that once defined you, but no longer defines where you are going.